Welcome to Locally Sourced. I'm Armanda Famiglietti, bringing history to life. That's what the Brewster High School students did with their production of the letters, Voices from the Great War. And I'm so happy to have some of the cast members and the director here today. Thanks for coming.
Andrea Perdicho.
Charlie Fitzpatrick.
Lurin.
Great. Thanks so much for saying your own names. I appreciate that. So I'm going to start with you, Andrea. The Letters was a completely creative, collaborative, new original production, right?
Very much so. So I actually didn't direct it. I was the co-creator. Alex Sirianni from Carmel directed it. We started last spring. I met with Jen Cassidy and Amy Campanero from the Southeast Museum, and they showed up in the office with 3 or 4 giant 3-ring binders full of letters that they wanted to turn into a show.
Let's back up before that. You were just sitting in your office, and these 2 women, Jennifer works at the Putnam County Historical Society. They just knocked on your door and walked in with binders.
Actually,
and you said, "Who are you?"
I had fair warning. The musical director, Stephanie Rubino, had emailed me earlier in the year and said, "Look, they're interested in doing something with this. It's a very big project, and her company, it wouldn't have been possible." So when Jennifer, we decided to meet in the main office in the principal's conference room, and we just sat around a table and she started talking. And she was so passionate about it and knew so much about it. I was hooked from all of her stories, and then it kind of started from there. We started to organize the script and choose which characters we were going to feature. That was the hardest thing. There were
all the characters are
hundreds
locals,
of letters.
Right?
Yes, hundreds of letters. So to choose who we were going to feature was difficult and sometimes heart-wrenching, because some of the more interesting stories had to be left out with how we organized the play. But it was a huge undertaking, a lot of time over the summer, and a brand new script, working on a brand new script and putting on a show that had never happened before, creating the costume design, I mean, all of it.
So tell me how long start to finish?
The show itself or the process?
The creative process, the whole thing.
Well, the play is based on a book that Jen's husband wrote where he collected letters that were published, I believe, in the Brewster Standard. And he had a whole book. So she started with the book.
Okay.
I met with her last April. So it was a year ago.
Wow.
And we just sat for hours and poured over these letters. And the first thing, she just started talking. And it was a little overwhelming, I'm not going to lie. It was very overwhelming because to her, these were people. And she knew about their families and their histories, and I was hearing about them for the first time. And it was a lot of information. And so the first conversations were about what do you want the people who see the show, how do you want them to feel? What do you want them to think when they walk out? Is it just going to be students standing up and reading letters? Or do you want them to think something about war itself? And who do we focus on? Because if it was overwhelming for me to sit there and hear all of these stories, I lost track of everything. Who do we focus on? So we decided to focus on 3 main characters whose letters we had the diary of Daniel Brandon and the diary of Clinton Peterson, and we had their letters. And Ruby Hartfield, we had many letters from her throughout the war. So we focused on those 3 characters, and then added these lovely narrators here.
So let me ask you about the letters. They were collected over the years. The families, I assume, donated these letters to the Historical Society. Is that
they
how
were
people...
first published in the Brewster Standard? And I'm sorry if I make historical inaccuracy. Jen Cassidy is a genius when it comes to this, and it will roll off her tongue like she always knew it. So we took it basically from those books, and then we attached. We got the information from the diaries as well. Okay.
And the diaries, where did they come from?
Again, the families.
The families donated it. Before they knew there was going to be a production, or after?
Oh, yeah. So Jen had copies of certain things.
Did you have to get permission from the families?
We had to get permission from all the families, yes. Wow. And then even to show the pictures, because we had projections. So both Jen and I, mostly Jen, contacted the families to let them know that we were doing the show and we wanted to include their family member in it. We had family members come, but every time For instance, Duncan Fife was one of the characters in the show, and one of his relatives contacted me and sent pictures, and then we were able to use the pictures as projections in the show as well. Okay. So there was a lot of permission getting from a lot of families, and some families were nervous, very nervous about how their, how their families were going to be portrayed.
I think it would have been an honor.
Yeah. Oh, and it ended up being an honor. Everybody said yes, and it was very interesting to talk to them after the show was over and how meaningful it was for them. We had worked so hard on it, and when you're talking about real people and not just characters, it has more weight.
So we have some photos from the production, which are beautiful, and I think the first one is actually the poster that you put around town, and I'm so sorry I didn't get to see it. It's a wonderful poster. Who are the two characters? Are they the main characters of the show?
Two of the main characters, yes. Anybody? I can keep talking, but the students could also say who they are.
So one of them is Daniel Brandon. That is the one on the lower left-hand side from when I'm looking at it. And he was the only missing soldier from Putnam County. He was held in a war camp, and he was eventually released. But one of the diaries that we are so fortunate to have is his. And we see in the show really the juxtaposition of the letters that he wrote to his family while he was in the camp, which are painting a different picture than the diary, which paints a grim photo of the things that he was subjected to.
Isn't that interesting? Okay. Yeah. And the woman?
That is Ruby Hartfield. She was a nurse in France, I believe. She had a very interesting story. We have a lot of letters from her. They're all from Putnam.
Okay, so she volunteered to go be a nurse in France. That was
the
very
daughter of a local
heroic.
preacher.
Okay, so it's in her blood that she had to do something great. And okay, so let's see another photo. What's this?
That's Jimmy Hartigan, a student, and he is playing, I believe, W. Stanley Day, who was part of the medical corps. And this is in the beginning of a scene where he had to watch a funeral of one of the soldiers who had died.
Okay, and all the characters in the play are originally Putnam natives, right?
All of them. There are a few that for instance, Charlie was a narrator.
Yeah. My character is, I want to say, the only character in the show that is, not real. My character is a plea of protest. She doesn't have a name. She rather represents a voice of women during the war who were fighting for suffrage, and they were fighting for equal rights and things like that, but they were also trying to protest the war to make sure it doesn't happen. So I represent the anti-war sentiment that was prevalent at the time.
Okay, that's great. Next photo.
So this is a scene, Being Sun is in Flanders Field, a poem by Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae of Canada. It's a very, very beautiful poem that's been set to music many times, very symbolic of World War I, with the red poppies representing blood.
Okay, and this scene, I think you told me before, was the mothers wishing their sons goodbye, or?
Yeah, so that's part of the idea behind the play. It's not just a bunch of boys or men off to war. It was the impact of war on the entire community, and not just the guys overseas. It was the women that were home.
Right.
We wanted to tell both stories. What was it like for them? At the time, the United States was very innocent. They didn't know what a war was or what it was like. So the very beginning of the show, which is called Shipping Out, as the boys leave, it's about patriotism and just being an American and standing up for our ideals. And the boys were very innocent. When they got the letters back, some of the letters would be blackened out. They were censored. Oh. And at this time,
because they were
there's
saying
no phone, there's no email.
Yeah, they were talking about how horrible it was, so they were censored out.
Some of them were censored, yes.
So there's a projection of poppies. Tell me the role poppies played in World War I.
Take it away, Harry.
So the poppies became very symbolic of the blood loss because of their beautiful red color. And the song/poem of Flanders Field talks about these poppies arising from these dreadful, blood-soaked battlefields.
And poppies still today are a symbol of war, because I know the veterans still wear poppies in their buttonholes, and it started in World War I. And you folks did a remarkable job using back projection in this play, made it a very strong statement. So there's several of them, right? And
it's throughout the entire show, and that was a big part of the show.
And this is a choral scene, so they're singing. How many songs are in the play, and how many
I want to say like 5 or 6.
Yeah. all World War I music, a cappella, which means no background music.
We were fortunate enough to have Nikki Sirianni, who is Alex's wife, who came in, and she taught us the vocals. And she went through all of us and made sure that it sounded good, and we had harmonies, and that the a cappella nature of the song wouldn't make it more difficult to sing.
Right, right. It's tough to sing a cappella. Yeah. It's nice to have a little tune in the background to follow. Next photo.
That's Andrew DeFabio playing Joseph Adrian, who was a lawyer in Brewster, I believe, who went off to war. He was wounded, and because he was wounded, he went back to the hospital. He was part of what was apparently the last battalion. There was a whole movie and a book based on that. Once again, Jen knew everything about her.
It was the famous Lost Battalion of the Argonne Forest. It was a very dense forest, so what happened was they went in and they got lost, and there was a lot of bloodshed. What happened was a shell exploded near him, and his arm went limp, and that's how he got sent home.
Oh, okay. Were any Putnam residents killed in World War I?
Oh, yes, many. And not just in the war, it was the flu epidemic.
Going on at the same time.
It killed mothers at home and people at home. So not only is there bloodshed in Europe, but there's also a lot of people dying in the home.
And we think we're going through tough times now.
Yeah.
There were people that were shipped out that never made it because they died
on the way. On the way. That's right. So this is all by boat back in the what were the years of the First World War?
We started, I think, when did this start?
Probably around 1917 when America entered the war.
Right. It started before then, right? So the war had been going on for a while back in Europe.
The Americans got in.
Okay. And then the Americans were in for about 2 years, and then the war ended. Next slide, if there is one. That's so dramatic. That's the barbed wire that was everywhere, right? And what's happening here?
That's Daniel Brandon. Daniel Brandon was the only POW from Putnam County. And in the beginning of this scene, he's reading his letters to his family, and then he ends by reading parts of his diary, which is what Charlie said was much more grim. And that's one of the stories that was woven throughout the play to keep continuity, so it wasn't just a bunch of letters from all these different people. We kept going back to his story. We kept going back to Ruby Hartfield. And in the end, we got to hear what happened to everybody in the finale.
Okay, and just to let the viewers know, we have some actual clips of the show, and the finale is one of them. And we'll be getting to those in a minute or two. But let's keep going with the photos.
So I believe that this is the opening scene, and there's kind of this excitement in the air. When we were on stage, you felt it, and I just imagined that's how it was, because it was the great unknown. It was going to serve your country, and it was going to be patriotic. So they were glad to do it, but of course everybody was scared. Nobody knew that this World War would be what it was. Of course, they had heard tales of what was going on in Europe, but America had not been involved previously. And my character in this scene is trying to convince people that this war is nonsense and you shouldn't be going into it because it's just going to create bloodshed. But when the World War first started, due to a lot of things, like the media was hyping it up and things like that, people were very excited to go and fight for their country. So the sentiment was not anti-war at that time.
Okay, so they were eager to go. Did they call it a world war in 1917?
No, it's the Great War.
Oh, it was the Great War in 1917.
The Great War.
And there's another great projection, and that's of the old county courthouse here.
That is correct.
Main Street or
Yes.
Glenide Avenue.
Jen contributed a lot of amazing photos that she had scanned in, which we used throughout the show. So we used some modern photos, like the barbed wire one that you saw, but then a lot from Putnam County. There's storefronts. There's a scene with storefronts, and you see all of that as well. Projection was a huge part of the show because we wanted the audience to feel more connected. This was a long time ago. It was the 100th anniversary of the signing of the Armistice. So the feeling walking out should have been a celebration or a memory of what the town was like, but at the same time, a feeling that these boys were young. I mean, the boys that were in the play were not much younger than the boys that were shipping out. Right. And we see them, they are young.
How old was the youngest boy sent over in
18, probably.
18?
Yes.
Wow.
But I'm sure there's
There's
few who
people
lied
who
about their
straggle
age.
in.
Lied. So there were
Yeah.
16 and 17-year-olds.
Yes, trying to serve their country, which is the same age as in a group. So when you think about and you're watching the show and you see these young high schoolers, sophomores, and juniors, it's kind of crazy to think how these people were fighting for our country at such a young age.
So I'm very excited. We have clips of the show. So I understand that they're just about ready. And so they'll appear on the screen. Can you give me an idea of what we're going to see in the first clip?
I think the first one, which one is the first one?
It's a song, Home Fires Burning. It's referring to the mothers who had to stay home and do their duty. That was a really common phrase, keep the home fires burning while I'm gone. Means make sure everything's good on the home front for when I come home.
Okay, and that's the name of the original song, Keep the Home Fires
Yes, all of the
Burning?
songs are
All
very
original.
of the time period.
Okay, I wonder if that was the first time that phrase was used, because it's been used many, many times.
Timeless.
Since.
I wouldn't doubt it. Yeah.
Okay, so we're just waiting for the clip to there. Okay, here we go.
Time that such things should have been destroyed.
They were summoned from the hillside, they were called in from the glen, and the country found them ready at the stirring call for men. Let no tears add to their hardships as the soldiers pass along. And although your heart is breaking, let them sing this cheerful song.
Time passes very quickly when one is in a front trench, because the whole of your attention is quite necessarily concentrated on your duties. No man's land is about the same anywhere along the line. Rough, ragged ground, shell holes, stumps, and always and everywhere, miles and miles of barbed wire. The American forces are getting reorganized, and there should be decisive development soon. The artillery has been doing considerable pounding of late. We are now in support and will probably go up the line tonight. We have had some interesting experiences, of which I will write more when we go back for a rest. Keep the home fires burning. With piles of love to you all, George.
Keep the home fires burning.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry I missed this play. Any chance you're going to do it again, or some other
Well,
school?
there are people that would like us to do it again. We've been asked to perform at the DAR luncheon in June. We've been asked to perform several different places. They wanted us to do it for Memorial Day. It's tough because these kids are in a lot of things. Like, we moved on after this. Marching band, you know. So we're still, the idea of a stage reading or recording a stage reading as well has been thrown around. It really has never stopped. We were asked to write an article for New York Archives magazine. That was actually just came out. Jen and I were asked to speak at a convention in December. So we never really close the books on the show. Usually you're done and you send back the scripts and you move on, but we keep
Well, I
working
hope
on
you
it.
don't close the book on the show, and I hope, you kind of make it your life like Booth did with Hamlet. You just keep performing, and it's such a great show. So we're going to have one more clip, and in a minute we'll know when that's going to come up. What did we just see? Who was that character? Was that a young man who was about to go to war, I assume?
That was George Casey, right?
And then more.
Yes.
And
He was already in war. This is at the point of the war when things had really escalated and people were just beginning to see how horrible it was. And all these mothers were getting letters home saying that their boys were dead or they were missing. And he was one of the characters who unfortunately passed away. And it just shows how war is like a universal loss. And the people, it's not just the people affected in Europe. A lot of people were getting affected at home. And I think one of the reasons that the show resonated so much was the fact that we learn about this war in history class and we do all these things and it's kind of a removed thing. But when we put it in the context of this was happening at home and people in America who we know and lived in our town were called into this, that's why it sticks with us so deeply.
Absolutely. The community aspect of this production really brought it very close to home. These weren't just some foreign people. They were Brewster, they were Carmel, they were Mahopac. And that really resonated. And these were these people's words. Like that in the video we just saw, that was a letter he wrote home to his mother. And then you see his mother reading of his loss. And it's just this sadness that you can't achieve if it's just some nameless person.
So is there any dialogue or narration that doesn't come directly from a letter?
Yes,
Much of our lines.
Erin is kind of, we are contrasting characters. For me, my character is very emotional, and she just represents all the heartache and like the anti-war sentiment, and more Erin is more the calm, cool, collected. This is what was happening, this is what was going on. And it showed a big contrast between the two mentalities.
But he played something real.
My character was Major Frank Wells, the father of Henry H. Wells, people with instrumental
The Wells.
meaning, the Wells
Right,
and Brewster. And it was very interesting to play Frank Wells, because with any other show I've ever been in, I could look up a video of someone else who's played it, but no one's ever experienced Frank Wells, and it's not like there's a video or Snapchat of how
Frank
he
Wells,
behaved.
right.
So I had to do a lot of research, and from his actions, kind of decipher what his character was like, which was a very interesting process.
Yeah. Well, okay, so let's watch the next video, and that's going to be up in a second. And this is the finale, right? We're going to see.
In the year following the Armistice, my father, Major Frank Wells, passed on, and never saw the day when all of Putnam County service members came home, or when Daniel Brandon received one of Putnam County's first Purple Heart medals. I continued my father's tradition of leading every Memorial Day service, and I led the county's select service for future wars and conflicts. I paraded service members to the train station and wished every brave man and woman Godspeed. I am Sergeant Henry H. Wells, Grand Army of the Republic, Crosby Post 302, Brewster, New York.
It was the Great War.
It was the war to end all wars.
If only that were true.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming.
Wow. So moving. Not a dry eye in the house, I assume. And a great way to get a standing ovation.
But the national anthem.
You know what you're doing. And, yeah. You guys have been so terrific. We just have to wind down. But what impressed me is just you folks talking, just Charlie and Erin.
They're phenomenal.
How much you know now about what happened in the Great War. And so would you have known so much if you hadn't been involved with this project?
Probably not. We would know stuff about it in general, but I think knowing things specifically about our county and our town, I would not have known at all. Because we don't look at the closer picture, the closer vignette, we always look at the big picture.
Right, and to me, wars always seem so long ago.
Absolutely.
You know, like another time, another age, different people, but this really makes it so much more personal, relevant, and timely.
Great, because that was the point.
Oh, well, you succeeded.
That's what we were going for.
You succeeded. So one thing I did read that article that you and Jennifer wrote, and you mentioned that the kids did their own research on all of their characters, and they put their costumes together themselves.
My theater class did an exhaustive costume search. It was hard to find World War I costumes. There's really no plays or musicals out there based on World War I that the costume companies had. So just to keep it as historically accurate as possible, down to the boots. the boots all the way up. Every single thing we tried to keep extremely accurate.
Well, you did a fantastic job. I can't say enough good things about this. I hope that folks have a chance to see it. You said there's a DVD of the show. Can people purchase
There is.
it?
I mean, I guess. I mean, we didn't really sell it. It was really just for the people that were in it. I mean, if people were interested, I have extra copies.
Okay. I would imagine people would be interested in it. So thanks so much for doing the play. All the hard work, you and Jennifer and my good friend Amy. Amy, whose name I cannot remember,
Campanaro.
my good friend Campanaro.
There you go.
Amy will be killing me later, so goodbye. So I just want to thank you. Let me shake your hand. You did a fantastic job. Thank you, Charlie, for coming. Thank you, Aaron, for coming. And thanks to the viewers and the crew.